Hello, everyone, and welcome to the 11th Eden Chief Delegate meeting. My name is Michael O'Sullivan, and I am the chair today. We have a very interesting meeting today. We're going to discuss and debate the proposed bylaw changes for our term. We're also going to hopefully execute the permission changes with Edgar. And I think it's pertinent to have a discussion, albeit a short one perhaps, on the forthcoming election on July 9. And we could potentially talk a little bit about the Eden member service proposals as well, plus any other business. So I'm going to forego the regular 2-minute update this week because I think we've got a big debate around the proposal of bylaws. And I think we should focus most of the meeting around that. Should this meeting go on longer than an hour, I think I'll let that happen. But obviously we'll try and keep it to the hour. So I'm going to hand over to Chuck first of all, because Chuck's done a lot of work on the bylaw changes, and I'm going to let him talk through his initial suggested changes, and then I'll talk through mine afterwards. Is that right with you, Chuck? Sure. You go.
Can you share that document, Michael?
Absolutely.
Great. So, yeah, we've been talking back and forth through the community on essentially our main communications channel, which is Telegram, Eden members, or Eden on EOS channels. And we were presented with a lot of changes to consider, and they have to be considered if you look under 4A right there. The active and proposed set of bylaws are indivisible single documents. So everything has to be proposed as one batch, and we cannot have separate, like in a government where you can have separate bills that are discrete proposals. We can't do that. So we have to propose a complete set of bylaws. Now, one of the first changes was under 4, which is the procedures of the bylaws. 4C, the old wording is the CDs can act inside the existing bylaws. And that wording has essentially no teeth to it. And we needed to propose something else that would figure out what the spirit of that sentence was and just clarify it, because that sentence in particular hung us up when we were going to ratify these bylaws. So this is in the sense of pardon me, this is in the sense of the bylaw ratification process, or the proposal of bylaws. It's my impression that this is about not creating logical inconsistencies within the one document. So we can't propose something that's going to be contrary to the existing bylaws. So the wording that I believe we've got a couple of different sentences here. The CDs must adhere to the bylaws. The CDs may not act contrary to the existing bylaws, or the CDs shall not propose any bylaw that is contrary to the existing bylaws. So we've just got it. We're going to find out which one of those makes the most sense and paste her in there. So I think we can make this a discussion period right now, if anybody has anything to say about those.
Just on the original wording, the CD shall not propose any bylaws that is contrary to the existing bylaws. I feel that might be prohibitive when changing bylaws, amending existing ones. So I think what Edgar has suggested, CDs may not act contrary to existing bylaws. That makes sense. I think that's probably the most robust wording, and it's very clear what that's meaning. CDs must act within the existing bylaws, but they're welcome to propose changes with the next CDs can then ratify and then act within those ratified bylaws. Is that correct, Edgar? Is our understanding of that what you meant?
Yeah, that's right. I mean, what I'm trying to achieve here, the spirit of this is you can act in the way that follows the mission of Eden, unless it's contrary to an existing bylaw, right? If you want to restrict a CD from acting a certain way, you have to go through the process. You must propose and you must ratify within the binding regulations and the rules and processes that are already detailed in this document. So that's the spirit behind this, right?
Okay, that's great. So Edgar, do you think it would be worthwhile us voting per change and then submitting a final document at the end, which we then vote again? Or should we kind of go through them all and then vote on them as one? My instinct is we go individually, but I'm welcome to. I'd love to hear your thoughts on this.
Well, I think since the next VP or CDs need to look at this document as a single document, I think we voice whether we would be supportive of each of these changes, but we're going to have to vote this as a single document as well. That would make the most sense. So if there's something here that you're not willing to propose and vote to propose, then we're going to have to relook at it one by one. But I don't think we should vote on each one. We should voice whether that's going to prevent us from proposing this as a whole document.
Yep, I think that's a good way to propose it. So I'd like to open then this to the floor for anyone to have a debate or to pass any comments or any concerns now. I'm okay with Edgar's layout broadly suggestion.
Yeah, I'm good with Edgar's sentence there.
I'm also good with the proposed sentence.
I'm okay with that too.
Okay.
Excellent. And again, this allows the CDs to act, to have the freedom to move and not to be too bogged down by only what we can do. But if there is something that we want to change and restrict, then it has to go through the process. And I think that accomplishes this.
Yep, I agree. Okay, so two more proposals from Chuck. The first one being the CDs may create an EOS account from the .eden namespace via a greater than 2/3 vote. I assume that means 2/3 majority vote. But Chuck, do you want to explain to us what your meaning is with this and what your intentions are?
Yep. We've been talking, well, we've actually instantiated circles, and we're looking to create what our critical circles being tech, vote, and communications. Michael, you informally accepted the communications role, and we didn't really put out an RFP for that. You accepted it, and you accepted to run it on your budget, and you've done a fantastic job of that. But that's something I think official communications is something that Eden needs to think about, because we just have black and white facts that need to be conveyed, and they need to come from an official source. And there is a such thing as an official, like we are an official entity, and there's an official message from Eden. So I think we need to have those three critical ones. There's been a lot of people in the community talking about different circles that may or may not be critical, but I think there's a consensus out there that those are the three critical ones. And we've created tech. There's an RFP right now out for vote, and we've essentially got comms started. But what the rationale behind creating a .eden name is that that expresses the will of Eden very clearly. Anything that's going to be done by a 2/3 plus vote of the chief delegates is expressing the will of the entire Eden electorate, the way that our system goes. There's nobody left behind. There's, the first past the post doesn't address often more than 50% of the population, and they're just left out in the cold. But every single Eden member has ownership of the delegates and the chief delegates that they elect. So when the chief delegates choose to make something with a 2/3 plus vote, we are explicitly expressing the will of the Eden community. And we want to create these circles that are there to help Eden succeed in its mission. And I think, creating a tech.eden account, creating a vote.eden account, creating maybe comms or media.eden, those become the official accounts where that work can occur. And what we can do with this, and what the whole circles idea has been talking about, is having budgets for these tasks. These tasks are going to persist. They're going to, Eden is going to have technical needs, whether it's on an election or election day or before an election or after an election, whatever. We're going to need a body who can do that. We're going to need communications in whatever state we're in, and we're going to need that voting system at the ready, that we can call a snap election with 30 days notice, essentially. So the organization needs to be nimble, and we need to have the capabilities just built in. Now, on top of that, if there are other things that Eden wants to do, for example, Gracie, you guys have a tremendous project, many projects going on in China, and we could be creating a China.eden or a CN.eden account that can help fund you guys, or Korea, or ESP or something. Those could be our multilingual, like our broader community accounts. We can have NFTs.eden, all sorts of different circles that we've been talking about. But what this bylaw could do is just expresses that when the CDs create a .eden account, it's expressing the will of Eden as an organization. I think that's what this says.
So I put a comment in here just to start the debate a little bit. I agree with the spirit of this. The only thing is, when we're now saying explicitly what we can do, it kind of goes against what I just talked about, right? That if it says that CDs may not act contrary to existing bylaws, then it's assumed that, yes, we can create EOS account Eden namespaces, because there's no bylaw that says we can't, right? So by saying that CDs may create, now we're making this as, well, wait, can we only do what the bylaws say we do? And we just agreed that, no, that's not the case. We can't go contrary to exist. But so by wording it this way, it's now assumed that everything has to be explicit. It's giving us permission to do, right? Instead of restricting us from doing. It's a slight difference, but that's why I'm proposing that it's the same spirit, right? It accomplishes the same, right? What do we want to prevent here? We want to prevent CDs just willy-nilly creating accounts and funding them whenever they want, right? So then what I'm proposing is the CDs may not create or fund any Eden namespace. They might create other ones that are not Eden namespaces without the greater of a 2/3 vote. So it's similar but different because it's a restriction. We're putting restrictions in here, assuming that everything else is allowed. What are your thoughts around that?
I think I agree with the first part. The CDs may not create. I think that's the right approach. But then we're adding a new element here to this discussion. So the original says the CDs may create an EOS account from the .eden namespace via greater 2/3 votes. Then you're adding the CDs may not create or fund any Eden namespace account without a greater than 2/3 vote. So I think we need to figure out if the word fund, how does that apply in this circumstances? Where are the funds coming from? Are they coming from the Treasury? Will that be automated? If it is automated, how do we add a new account? That kind of stuff. So I think
an individual CD could certainly fund that.
Yeah, that's a very good point, right?
If you look
CDs
at
could fund from that. So you're
Bylaw 5B. Sorry, it just says Bylaw 5B says all account. 5A. All transactions from the Eden active account, Genesis account, require 2/3 threshold. So basically, that might be the spirit of what you're saying there. We cannot fund without that, but I think any transaction we make has to be 2/3 plus.
Yeah, any Treasury transaction already has that, so it's being redundant. I agree with that. So I'll edit that. I don't think it's needed. So this just means no one's able to use that Eden namespace without 2/3 vote. So I, unilaterally, or any CD can't just create, whatever.
Edgar.eden.
Baseball.eden because I feel like I want to, right? It would have to be, it protects the sanctity of that namespace, if you will.
Yeah. Anything done with that namespace is deliberate on behalf of Eden as an organization, I think.
Right, and all CDs must vote. So it's not necessarily a Treasury transaction, right? But it's one that we're putting in here that's saying that you can't. So this leaves, the CDs can create other EOS accounts if they want, right? No problem. Sure. The bylaws aren't restricting it. You can do it. Michael can create, by wire on Eden or whatever, right? And that doesn't change anything. He doesn't need approval for doing that. So by here, it's respecting that spirit that if it's not explicitly restricting, it's assuming that you can. And if for some reason the Eden community wants to prevent that, well, then we have to go through the process, propose, ratify, etc.
Now, I don't know if this is a necessity, but we're not saying why the CDs may create these. Now, I know, Chuck, it's been flexible to allow them to create them, I guess, to whatever ends they need. But these are obviously put in place for kind of the member service, kind of the ability to run the elections, having the resources to run our own elections. So I just wondered, is there a need to relate it to anything or to limit it to what they're for? Like maybe something like the CDs may create an EOS account, or the CDs may not create Eden namespace account that are greater than 2 to 3 majority. I'm not too sure. It's like, why are we creating these accounts? Or should we limit?
I think you're introducing a bit too much subjectivity into that. The bylaws have to be just very, very objective, I think.
Okay.
Yeah, I think we've been. The context is the circles that we've proposed, right, in our meetings in our term. I think that's the context. However, the context might change with other CDs, and they might want to use this for another purpose. That's not what we are recommending, but if they do want to, then they're going to have to ring fence that ability by, again, proposing and ratifying.
Okay. So on the whole then, is everyone broadly in support of point 10 with Edgar's changes?
Yeah, and I think Edgar's wording there is preferred.
Yeah, I'm happy with that. Edgar, Gracie, and Brock. Are you guys okay with that?
Yeah, I agree.
Brock, are you okay with the CDs may not create any Eden namespace account without greater than 2/3 vote?
Yes. Sorry, everyone. It's we had to move our board meeting to a Saturday afternoon. I'm hosting some people, so I'm fully attentive, but I was just walking to the table. Yes, I approve.
No worries. Okay, great. So moving on then to number 11, which is the planned Treasury disbursement shall be 15% of the Genesis Eden Treasury each month. Aside from the slightly non-absolutist of planned, I assume, well, in fact, Chuck, why don't you explain to us what your logic is with this?
Okay, so the Treasury disbursement level is currently at 5%, and it's not an entry in the bylaws at all. It's just in the code. So, I mean, who knows how many other things are in the code that are really important that maybe should be in the bylaws document, because then they would become variables that we can address actually in our, but planned Treasury disbursements of X% of the genesis.eden treasury each month. That's something that we need to have control over. It's something we need to be able to think about. And we've been, again, this is it's coming from our membership. Have been saying the disbursements that the budgets that we're getting right now are limiting. We have a massive treasury that's been from the broader context of the EOS network. The EOS network last year, when this was all born, was in an acute crisis mode, and it was like, we're going to ramp up. We're going to change our inflation from 1% to 3%. That 2% inflation is going into a savings account, and then it's going to be deployed on the network to get shit done now. And when we have 200,000 EOS sitting in an account doing nothing, that's not crisis management. That's not deploying our resources to address the crisis that EOS is in right now, which is we need to build stuff, and we need to get We need to get stuff moving. We need to get people active. We need to get people excited. All this stuff needs to happen. And for us to be thinking about having a treasury that's going to last, 5 years or something, we can't be thinking that way. We have to be thinking that the network wants us here and active, and the network wants us to succeed. And if we do succeed, the network will top up our treasury. That's the perspective that we have to go from. And if we're not willing to go from that perspective, I don't think we don't want people just latching on to this treasury and sucking from it, and just that is their business model. We're going to latch onto treasury, or we're going to latch onto the ENF and just draw from it. We need people who are going to think broadly and get excited about this and think about ways that we can really make Eden an exciting place for people to come and improve the EOS network. So again, this is something that Brock has said from the beginning. We need to think from a position of abundance. EOS is fantastic. We've got all this great stuff at our fingertips, but if we don't use what we have in front of us, it's never going to get any better. And drawing down at a rate of 5% a month is just far too conservative for what the network has given us to work with.
Yep. So yeah, I would agree with that. If you can see the spreadsheet on my screen, I've just put together how it could potentially look. So this is how it's dispersed at the moment at a 5% rate. You can see the amount of HCD would get this much, CDs get this much, that gets this much. If we were to increase this to 15%, the numbers change as such. And then I've laid out a rough, just example draft of how that money could be distributed. So what I've suggested is the delegates would retain 50%, and that would be through 30% to CDs and 20% spread equally with delegates. And then you could have 4 circles. And then the circles, you could decide how much of the remaining disbursement is divided amongst the circles. My thoughts are that the delegate remuneration should be fixed, but then the next, whoever is the delegates in charge, they could decide how much to align to each circle. So for just demonstrative purposes, see circle 1 has 10%, circle 2 has 5%, circle 3 has 5%, circle 4 has 30%. The rationale being circle 4 could potentially be a Pomelo only circle. So there are some delegates and some people in the community who would prefer just to use their remuneration to fund Pomelo projects, which is a worthwhile endeavor in my opinion. So the circle 4 could use their funds, so it would be say 7,000 EOS in July. They could use those funds to find consensus about which projects to support on Pomelo and how much of the disbursement to give to Pomelo, and then they could do that. Now Pomelo is obviously per quarter, so if, just for argument's sake, the next one was in September, I know it's in July, but you could potentially then have the best part of 20,000 EOS to potentially find consensus with and then share that or donate it or contribute it to the projects you support Pomelo. So that would be a version of how you could do it, but these are all variables and it can be divided in any way. But as you can see, the circles start actually getting some decent funding where they can actually make some impact. And you can reduce these. You can have less circles or whatever. This is just my initial response to it.
Can we go back to the proposal, just on the wording? So my thoughts around here is, again, following the same spirit we've been discussing, not being so explicit in this bylaw of saying planned dispatch shall be, and putting in a specific percentage, because this opens up, what if the future CDs just say, it should be 14.5 and not 15. So therefore, we're not going to ratify the whole thing, right? So what I'm proposing is saying that the CDs may not change the Treasury disbursement percentage of the Eden account without a 2/3 vote, which means anyone can change it, right? You can change it with a 2/3 vote, but that percentage is not necessarily what's in the bylaw. It's the ability to change that percentage at the 2/3 vote level, right? So what this would mean is saying, okay, well, the bylaws now restrict the CDs from changing this unless there's a 2/3 vote. And then those CDs will decide what that percentage is, right? And we'll do that through the process, through a voting of 2/3. So that way, I would, if I was looking at this document as a single document, and as the future CDs will, I can follow that spirit. Yes, I agree. The CD should not be able to willy-nilly change the Treasury disbursement if there's no consensus on that, on what that amount should be. So what that percentage should be. We are proposing 15, right? And we'll pass a vote saying that that's going to be it, and we'll then push the code to reflect that. But in the actual bylaws, we're not acting against it because we voted against it. We're just not being explicit on what that percentage is. I think we accomplished the same thing without necessarily, and making it flexible enough, but without necessarily putting something that says this is going to be that percentage, to perpetuity until someone else wants to change it.
There could be a black swan event where EOS does a 10x next month. And then it's like, wow, do we really want, 15% distributed at this new valuation? Is that really how much we want going out? And there could be a case where even midstream chief delegates have to adjust that. And if they don't have the ability to adjust that live, and if it's in a bylaw, I agree. Changing bylaws is very cumbersome. And it's meant to be cumbersome, but I hear what you're saying, Edgar, is that you may want flexibility. But again, that wording is somewhat redundant because nothing we do, any push of any code has to be 2/3 of any decision we do with these accounts has to be 2/3 plus per the bylaws. So what you're saying here is that we can change the Treasury disbursement percentage, but it requires a 2/3 vote. I understand the distinction you're making. And do we want to put 15% in the bylaws, or this is again creating a precedent? How much control do the chief delegates have over everything in Eden? How much needs to be in the bylaws? How much is discretionary?
So just on that point, so I would imagine Dan chose 5% for a reason, and I also chose 15% for a reason. That it's not just arbitrary. So like the 15% provides enough runway for 12 months. So four more delegate instances. So I think that leaving it as just a total variable, so the next cities could change it to 100%, for example, or 5%. I don't think that's helpful because that stops Eden from being able to plan effectively, and it might put in jeopardy the ability to fund its own next election. So I'm not against some flexibility, but I kind of think there should be a minimum and a maximum. Maybe not minimum, but there kind of should be a maximum. For the organization to operate and be able to have enough resources for the next election. That's my view on it.
So are you suggesting it should say planned Treasury disbursement shall not exceed 15%?
Yeah, precisely, something like that. Yeah.
Okay. I get where you're coming from here, and Brock, that's a good suggestion as well. I just, circumstances change in terms of, as Chuck mentioned, the purchasing power of what you can do with that, and also the being that explicit. Someone saying, "Well, we're not going to ratify the entire document because we don't agree with this 15%," right? Because as Michael, as you said, there's reasoning behind that, which means that there's someone that could find a reason against it. So if you want to set a limit, basically saying that it should now be, I'm fine with that. I don't know if you want to suggest specific language to that.
Well, I like having a limit so that that a group of chief delegates cannot run the coffers dry without lots of visibility and runway ahead of it. And as far as purchasing power is concerned, we get our money currently from the ENF principally. And then it's our job to make sure that the coffers are full and that we're doing our jobs well enough that we continue to be funded, that the organization is adding value to do so. And we should be always working to get resources if we have uses for them that are accretive to the overall EOS community.
I agree. And I think if we do set the number, what we're doing is, as chief delegates, we're suggesting that this is the number that would have benefited us. And that's why we're handing it over to the next generation, but they can change it for the generation after that, right? So you never control your own treasury disbursement. I think that's important because you only have access to what the last CD signed off, and that's in the spirit of Dan's safety measures. That might be a nice way to move forward with it. Gracie, do you have any thoughts on this?
I'm thinking about the 50%, but I agree that we need to give them just like not a range, but a number. But I'm still thinking about the 50%.
And so I changed that suggested language. The CDs may not change the Treasury disbursement percentage of the Genesis Eden account to exceed 15%. So we're basically putting a limit.
Just add monthly to.
If we put it like a limit, it's like even they ratify this bylaw, they still need to decide how much they need to change. So they just after they ratify the bylaw, it's not everything's working. They still need to talk about something.
Yep.
So I think bylaw maybe should just after they ratify, they should just follow it.
Yeah, if we look at the other bylaws, which are just addressing variables, many of them, the way that the previous CDs did it, they identified variables that they could change that would be impactful in the organization. And they laid out exactly what those variables, the new values should be in the bylaws. I think we would be following the spirit of what came before us if we actually had a value in here for what we're proposing. Because as Gracie said, opening up the possibility for weeks and weeks of conversation and debate about something is not what we're looking for here. We're looking for something that's going to be the opportunity for decisive action.
Just one other point as well. Say, for example, we had it does not exceed 15%. Would the CDs have the ability contractually to spend less or to request less of a disbursement?
I think by saying not to exceed, the answer is yes. And I think that, one of the things as was just mentioned is we're saying this is what we think this next round of CDs needs to be able to function. And, one of the first things they should be doing is really be talking about their budgets, talking about the numbers of what they think they're going to spend, where those proceeds are going to go to the extent that they have visibility. And one of the things that a new group of delegates should be talking about early on is the balance sheet, the resources, what they're going to be able to do with it, call it more accountability in the accounting. And having more discretion. I mean, one of the things, the way that we get elected into this position is a conversation could be Edgar's like, I'm going to build this. And we might say, okay, Edgar needs 10% of the treasury and the rest of us are splitting 5, allowing this group to have a little more say in, where the resources go based upon what a particular person wants to do is probably a good thing to have some more discretion of how we allocate the resources. It just being automatic and even with, whoever randomly is selected to be the Satoshi or whatnot, there might be a better model here. Pretty sure there is.
I think if there's a scope to change it, people will always set it to the maximum. And then
that's the assumption, right? So we're putting a limit. So you would assume that we are going to get to 15%. And if someone does, they can put it at 10 because I don't know, they think that that's too efficient. They're way more efficient. They can grab the same, they can do the same thing. So you would assume kind of like how people push it to the debt limit all the time, right? I mean, you assume that the CDs would want to have this to the limit. If not, they would change the limit by proposing a new bylaw and having it ratified with justification of why. If they wanted to keep it at 5%, they certainly could, right? But we'd leave it to them to decide what that budget would be.
But then to just to Chuck's
Well, we one thing we've seen historically though is when there is a pool of tokens around a network, sometimes you'll see people say don't spend any of it because they want to see less inflation. We've seen that even in our own ecosystem. So there are theoretically people that would run for a chief delegate position to say we should be spending nothing. We have seen that repeatedly. So to assume that the sole incentive is to spend as much as possible has not historically been the case in this sector. With government, that appears to have become the standard everywhere, but that's not always true with us.
Yeah, so I would agree with that. I just think that to Chuck's point, the next CDs will probably end up spending quite a long time debating how much of the difference between the 5 and the 15 they should go with. Whereas if we set it as a fixed number, then that's not a decision for them to debate, and then they can get on with it.
Not necessarily, Michael, because they have to ratify this as a single document. So they would still debate whether 15 is the right number. They're still going to have to debate. They're still going to have to answer that question.
Yeah, to the point where like 15 or 5, basically. It would also be the only bylaw that wasn't mandatory in its entirety, I believe.
Right, which I'm aware of, for example, the membership fee, right? So the membership fee is explicit in 3. If we follow the same kind of logic, the bylaw number 9, for example, should read more, the CDs may not change the Eden membership fee amount set in EOS without a 2/3 vote, right? But they're being explicit there. I'm not necessarily saying that, but we're setting a different path on whether this should be explicit with a number or whether setting a limit and allowing the process to decide what that is.
Now, if we think about it from realistically, this would not affect the first payment to the budget of the next CDs. This will be implemented over the course of the first 30 days, depending on when they choose to ratify this. But one of the things that we've been considering, been bouncing it off people, and we want these circles to work. We want the idea of circles with individual budgets to do what they like, to have a mission. For example, we've got a crew of people, really good people, working on an NFT project for Eden, and right now we're just at the dreaming stage. But if there was a budget there to work with, these people would be able to execute something really, really, really nice and really quickly. I think what I'm saying is that we want these circles to exist. We want them to be successful, and we want to set up the conditions where Eden could be funding them on a persistent level. Just as Michael says, he gives us the different sliders, and you can see the funding levels for 3 circles, 4 circles, 5 circles, and you can see, generally speaking, what kind of budget they would have over the course of a few months. Now, with us just saying 15%, planned Treasury disbursements shall be 15%. That means that the incoming CDs are quite likely going to ratify this, and they're going to have an expanded pot that they have to figure out what to do with. And they're going to think about putting that money into these circles and starting that concept. And then they're going to think about, or I'm inviting them to think about, what the code is going to have to look like to fund those circles at appropriate levels. So they're going to think about the CD's role is to identify the funding levels for these circles and is to implement that. And that's what they would be writing in their next set of bylaws for the next term. And I think if we just concentrated on bumping up the disbursement to 15%, it gives a whole lot more latitude for chief delegates and delegates to fund things that they want to fund. And we want just more options for people to fund things. We want this to be almost like a mini Palmetto ecosystem where we've got all these different Eden projects that Eden members can choose to participate in. And I think just putting it in black and white, the planned as in coded encoded treasury disbursements might be a better word there than planned, because you can plan to do something today and do it tomorrow. Planned is a very subjective term. So maybe encoded treasury disbursements shall be 15% of the Eden treasury each month. That might be a better term.
The programmed
or encoded, or
program treasury disbursements.
Yeah.
Just treasury disbursements. I don't think you need to add the coded or planned or programmed or anything. That's all seemed right.
Yeah, I agree.
So I think treasury disbursement shall be 50% of the genesis.eden treasury each month works, or we can have the other option is shall not exceed 15%. Those are the two options on the table.
I really think we should give them a number, because as Gracie said, they're just going to waste a whole lot of time talking about that number.
Yeah, I agree. And 50% it works in terms of providing a year's worth of runway for all the CDs. And
then I would suggest that we provide that documentation, right? Right. This is what we suggest would be the use of those proceeds.
Yep, I'll provide that. Okay, then, so shall we agree, or does anyone have any issue with treasury disbursement shall be 15% of the genesis.eden treasury each month? The way I worded that was kind of weird. So the silence means everyone's agreement, right? Everyone agrees.
Yeah, I'm not gonna not ratify or propose this, and I'll leave my comment as for the record, I guess.
Okay, sweet. So those three. Now, I did want to make a suggestion to change the mission statement, so we can have a bit of debate about that. I'm not, hugely married to it, but I think we could further a bit more. So my suggestion is to create, which is already existing, to create and enhance value for the EOS ecosystem and to ensure the continuity of Eden on EOS. So the first part is the enhance value. So I think to create value and to make the existing value better should be a no-brainer. I think enhancing the value and creating more value is a standard approach to that. What do you guys think?
I agree. I like the ensure the continuity of Eden on EOS. I think that makes it clear that part of what we're trying to do as CDs is ensure that there's a transition, continuity from one to the other, and that the elections are funded and planned and taken place. So I like that. I think it adds to the spirit of the entire document. Create and enhance. It sounds somewhat the same. I think you might be like to create and maintain the current value.
I think create and enhance can be summed up with the word add. To add value to the EOS ecosystem.
The reason I chose enhance was because we're creating additional value, but there is obviously what we're doing is we're making processes better. And that's the enhancement. So it shouldn't just be about creating new things. It should be about enhancing what we have already. That was my reasoning behind it. You could argue that. yeah, creating is.
But are we're not enhancing the EOS ecosystem, we're enhancing Eden. Is that we're adding value to EOS by enhancing Eden? Is that kind of what you're saying?
No, I'm saying we're enhancing. Our primary mission is to add value, but also to enhance the existing value within the EOS community. So it is to add new value, but also to make what's there better. And I think that's what we're going to be doing a lot of, right? Whether it's from Eden through to community engagements, we want to make what is here already better, and we want to add more things. So we want to have better communication with the community, but we also want to extend the community, right? We want to make it bigger. If you have just to create value, you're not enhancing the existing value. I mean, it's pretty subjective, and it's pretty a nuanced thing, but.
I'm fine with either way, and I'm supportive of including the ensure the continuity of Eden on EOS.
So should we handle that last part first? I mean, Chuck, what's your thoughts on the continuity of Eden on EOS?
I think is a good thing. the continuity itself, the wording itself, like we've sort of been going. I mean, is Eden on EOS the official term for this blockchain organization, or I mean, do we need to rename the blockchain organization, or can we just say and ensure the continuity of this blockchain organization? Because we're referring to all the same thing. We don't need to. I mean, this is the mission statement for this organization. Do we need to say the name again in the mission statement? That's what I'm saying. Because what we want to do is add strength and the potential for continuity to Eden, yes. But do we need to rename it there? Like I'm saying, maybe ensure the continuity of this blockchain organization. Is that what we are? Are we a blockchain organization? I don't think people are going to argue about us calling ourselves a DAO. They're going to argue about us calling ourselves a DAC or a DAO, whatever word we use. I think when you really get down to it, we're a blockchain organization at this point. And we want to ensure the continuity of this thing that we're doing. But what word are we going to use for this thing? Maybe just Eden, ensure the continuity of Eden, or is Eden on EOS the official, I guess the title of the document here, Eden on EOS bylaw proposal. So yeah, maybe Eden on EOS is the right word there.
Or just organization to create and enhance value for the EOS ecosystem and to ensure the organization's continuity.
Just instead of the debate, let's take this organization. Let's not have a debate about the semantics of that.
I think that's great.
To create and enhance value for the EOS ecosystem and to ensure this organization's continuity. Is everyone broadly happy with that?
I think it's great.
Awesome. Yeah. We want to tweak it. Okay. Okay, cool. So that's kind of all the changes, right? Is there any other changes anyone wants to discuss now in terms of the bylaw proposals? I think that's everything. Okay.
All right. So at this point, we put this to a vote. Yes.
Yeah. So,
we make a motion and someone seconds. So let's make a motion. I'll make a motion to approve the bylaws as written.
And this is the full document. If you go over to the Google Doc, Michael, I think we've got we have to approve the full document and put it in. I added it in there.
Oh, nice.
And then just to be clear, we propose this officially on chain by way of a multi-sig referencing this document. So Eden #2 bylaw proposal. Is that the correct sort of next on-chain path?
I assume so.
Assuming that we all vote to propose.
Should we vote now or should we just vote on chain? We do both.
We should vote now, I think, for sure. But
yeah, I think you want written, you want spoken, approval so that if, you know, we thought we all had agreement and then someone doesn't vote on chain, we're not like, I think as the group meets, I think we still want to go through the motions of making the verbal agreements.
Sorry, Edgar, I just deleted your comment there. I thought I was accepting the comment to put it in there, and what I did was accept it and dismissed it. So if if anybody can remember what the hell you had for part C there. The CDs shall not act contrary to the existing bylaws. I think that's what you had.
So wait till Dad's done pulling the stuff.
Yeah, that's correct, I think.
Yeah, I think that's right.
Okay. Are you going to update these two as well, Chuck?
Without and that's correct.
Yep. It's pretty good. Just 4 minor changes.
Okay, so we can let's get rid of this. Whoops. Get rid of this formatting here. It's highlighted. I don't want it to be highlighted. It stays highlighted. I don't know why. Doesn't matter. Okay, Chief Delegates voting in favor of proposing the newly drafted bylaws for Eden 3. Unanimous?
I vote in favor of proposing the bylaws.
I vote in favor of proposing these bylaw changes.
We just need Brock and Edgar.
Yes, I vote to propose.
Brock?
Yes, I approve.
Awesome.
Okay.
Well, congratulations, everyone. We've just proposed a set of new bylaws, and they will be hopefully ratified by the next group of CDs. That's very, very cool. What a big achievement. Woohoo! So I think it would be cool then if, Edgar, can you share your screen? Do I need to give you permission? Yep.
So this is the multi-sig transaction I proposed to transfer the active keys from genesis.eden to the current CDs, as long as a 10 EOS transfer from the EOS.io grants account to the Genesis Eden account with the memo. The ENF supports the new bylaws as enacted by the Eden Chief Delegates. It was set to expire the 28th and now is able to be executed with the signatures of the 3 active keys that were requested, 3 of 7. So we'll move to approve and execute these.
You gotta love live. Live.
Yeah. Let me try log in and log.
Switch off and on again, Edgar. Oh, jeez. I'll cut this bit out of the video.
Yeah, I don't have to approve, I need to execute.
Invalid authority, threshold 2 keys. Do we all have to approve it?
Not sure.
Okay, well, we tried. We'll debug offline.
We'll have to.
Okay. All right, fine. Is there any other, I'm cautious we have gone on for a while, but is there any other stuff we should discuss while we're all together at this point? I have created a Eden member service proposal, and I'll put that out to the community. There are, apart from what we've already discussed, no bylaw changes to that. I've kept it so it's, a recommended structure. So I will share that with the community. Everyone can review that. But other than that, is there anything else we should discuss at this point?
Yeah, I'd like to bring up one topic that doesn't require much discussion today, but just something to put on the record. Helios's incubator has been working with a project called Haifa DAO. I've spent the last few days talking about Haifa DAO. Michael O'Sullivan and I have had a chance to talk about this, Chris Barnes, and going through an evaluation to see if this would be a suitable solution for Eden's infrastructure and tool set. Nothing really to discuss today, but I would encourage all of the chief delegates to take a look at it and form an opinion. I think that there's potentially a very interesting opportunity for us here.
So Brock, how would you envision Haifa DAO operating with Eden? How would those two come together?
The preliminary conversations would be that they're currently built on Telos, that they could do an EOS build of the Haifa platform, as well as to implement all of the Eden governance, which would require development on their part, but to implement all of our governance into that platform. And I think it's a really interesting potential solution. I'm not making a recommendation at this point. It's something that we're exploring and considering. I think how we've entered Eden as chief delegates and the challenges that we've faced from a development support tool set feature perspective. I think we want to be looking at both, buy versus build. This is the, not a potential solution to advance Eden's infrastructure by certainly many months, possibly years, and without having to buy a platform. I think this could get done through an investment from Helios, Pomelo's third round, potentially even the launching of a new foundation and working with the ENF. This is not defined. I just wanted to put it on everyone's radar by next week. I think we should have a clear understanding to be able to make a recommendation, and I just wanted to put it on everyone's radar.
Brock, just having had a quick look at this technology, it seems incredible. Do you think something like this would effectively be the Eden member services in a box, so we could run everything straight out of that immediately?
That's what might be possible, yes. It looks like that might suffice, but I haven't had a chance to play around with it enough. I know you just started, and that's why I think it's worth everyone taking a look. Because if we can advance our infrastructure and feature set, membership services, and all of these things, and skip a year forward, and certainly without the expense of building it, it's worthy of our consideration. And it was already built on Telos. So we're talking about almost no development to port the platform. Really, the only development required would be the Eden governance integration, and it might solve a bunch of our problems. And if the next round of delegates get to come in having a robust platform and tool set, it will allow them to do the work that I think we all really hope to do here. We're doing a lot of really basic, fundamental, foundational building, and we're not able to do the really cool stuff that I hope future delegates are able to do. And this might accelerate that process for all future delegates.
Awesome. Thank you for sharing that, Rob. That's incredible. Okay, is there any other business for today's meeting?
Yeah, they're talking about Eden procedures. We've so last chief delegate's term, they released one request for proposals. I believe it was just the one for a website for Eden, and it never actually got filled, or I don't know if there was a bid on it or anything like that, but there was one RFP out. But I mean, it set the precedent for a process, and we have now released 2 RFPs, one for the tech lead position, and it was clear in that RFP that it was to assemble a team and do the work of implementing the bylaws in code. And now that we have active permissions, that code can start to get updated. And Edgar's team is working on that. Edgar has submitted a time and materials bid quote to the chief delegates for that work, and we have accepted it. Well, it's I mean, he recused himself from the process, but he is working on that right now. Now, there is another bid out right now for election operations, when we've called it vote.eden lead. And this is to take responsibility for the running of the elections and document them and produce a postmortem of the process to the chief delegates, which would essentially be the next term. And I've received one proposal for that. And I'm just wondering what the chief delegates feel about accepting proposals that do not that aren't in our system. You know, like we've released in a very transparent manner a request for proposal, and do we accept proposals that have not followed that that process?
So my thoughts on it are this. Obviously, process is important, and consistency in application is obviously very important as well. It's how we define a fair procurement process. However, if there is a specific group who are who claim to be very capable of doing the work, and they have provided the proposals in a manner, then I still think it's worth considering. Given we're such a small community at this point, I don't want to be too much of a stickler for specific processes and stuff. Although, if the application doesn't tick all the boxes that we need, then yeah, of course it shouldn't be accepted. But if it just wasn't submitted in the right manner, but everything else is okay, I still think it should be considered. So Edgar's recused himself from this, so he's not going to update anyone. So Gracie and Brock, do you have any thoughts on this?
I think it's okay.
Yeah.
It depends on if they can really get things done.
Yeah, I got nothing really to say or add. Sounds all fine, I guess.
Okay, great. So we will be making a decision on that pretty sharpish, not on this call, but today, I believe, or tomorrow. The request proposal closes tonight. Is that right, Chuck?
Correct. Yeah, 11 p.m. UTC.
Okay, UTC, 11 p.m. UTC. Okay, great. Okay, great. Is there any other business for today's meeting? No. Okay, fantastic. Well, thank you.
Get the word out. Get the vote out.
Yeah, get the vote out. Make sure you come to the election on July the 9th. Make sure you tell all your friends. Make sure you sign up to become an Eden member. And let's make this the best election we've had yet. And let's do a really good job. So thank you, everyone. Thank you for a credible debate. And thank you for your proposals and your ratification of said proposals. I look forward to our next meeting. And I'll see you all next week. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thanks, Michael.
Thanks, everyone.